we got to get right into it. Long holiday weekend. We got a lot of work to do this week.
Oh, yes. This is the big deal this week. Pay attention. John and Ken Show. John Cobell and Ken Shampoo. KFI AM 640. That is a harsh sound. Good Lord. All right.
That's you, man. You've been added to our hot alarm sound. Basically, it's battle stations, everybody, and people were asking for this last week. We now have it on the website. What the hell are we talking about? Well, this week in Sacramento, there are two major pieces of legislation that you're going to get involved with in syncing them. The smaller one, but it's still important, is the gas and the car tax increase. That's the one where they need 2/3. So what we put up on the website is a link to Republicans in Sacramento to get them to hold fast and not vote for that thing, because they can't get it without one state senator, a Republican, voting for it, and two state assembly Republicans.
Right. So the names and phone numbers. Now, we're going to put out a warning at the beginning. When you call, do not be abusive. Don't engage in any name calling or slurs or threats or anything like that. You just tell them that they cannot vote for a gas tax increase or a car tax. They cannot do it, and you can tell them why, whatever reasons you have. I think they're self-evident.
Yes. There have been rumors that there could be a few Republicans who might go this way. They're sympathetic to this ridiculous idea that we don't have enough money to fix our roads. We've always had enough money. They just don't want to budget it.
In fact, if you want to issue kind of a threat, all you have to do is say Anthony Adams.
Heads on a stick?
Heads on a stick, Anthony Adams. He was the Republican assemblyman that we targeted several years ago for removal, and eventually he quit the race. People wanted to recall him because he was a particularly nasty, duplicitous politician who backstabbed his constituents by voting for a massive tax increase.
Yeah, where is he today, I wonder?
He's shoveling poop.
It's up there in the mountains, right?
Yeah, he's shoveling poop at I think at a public school restroom.
Oh, shoveling?
Yeah.
What do the kids do? Just squat on the floor? I don't get that.
It's those Michelle Obama lunches that causes problems.
We'll be talking about that, too, during the show. But, of course, the real big reason we're here, because this could affect you for decades and decades to come, seriously, is to stop Senate Bill 350, which has already passed the state Senate. So the action comes down to the Assembly. This is the one that cuts your gas use by 50%, 50.
And they want to do it relatively soon, within the next 15 years. So this is, you've heard the cliche game-changing. This is life-changing. This means you could only drive half as much as you do now. And because there's only two ways, and still to this day, I've got a whole, like half the stack today, right? Half our big pile of stuff is stories in all the major newspapers, all the major news websites about the Senate Bill 350, 50% gas consumption cut. None of them explain how you're going to get there, which leaves the only two possibilities that we've been talking about from day one. They either massively tax gas, so you're paying $15 a gallon, $20 a gallon, or gas rationing.
And I have a great quote along those lines from your right. Many, many articles. Finally, the media is waking up and covering this bill in Sacramento because it is going to have a big impact if it passes, and we got to prevent that from happening. Something called the DailyDemocrat.com from the Bay Area has a great quote on what John was just talking about, and it comes from none other than the spokeshole from the author of the bill, Kevin DeLeon. His name is Anthony Reyes, and he said, yeah, we need to do a better job explaining how we're going to get there. And we're working on that now, meaning that the 50% cut in gas use.
Well, you're telling me they don't know? Or they're covering it up?
It's not good either way.
I vote B. I say they're covering it up.
Oh, yeah.
Because, this isn't complicated physics here. If you want people to stop... Look, if they wanted to stop you from buying milk, what would they do? They'd slap a $20 a jug tax on the milk. And people would say, I can't afford this milk.
Well, isn't this the theory behind getting people to stop smoking? They keep taxing and taxing it?
Exactly. That's what they say. It's like, you know what? Every time we add a tobacco tax, smoking rate goes down.
Yeah, they always cite it as evidence that we've had an impact on people.
And if you didn't tax, what would be the other option? The other option is, you know what? When you go to the grocery store, you're going to have to give them a voucher. And once a week, we'll let you buy 1 quart of milk. Or once a week, we'll let you buy 1 pack of cigarettes. It's illegal to buy any more than 1 pack, illegal to buy more than 1 jug. And that's what would happen at the gas pumps. They had a gas rationing system in the 1970s. Maybe some of you aren't old enough to remember. But there was all what they call oil shocks back then, price shocks. The Middle East was in its usual disarray and chaos, and there was a shortage of gasoline. And so they had to ration it. And I remember when I was a kid, my dad could go to get gas on even days. One of our cars had an even license plate number at the end of it. So we could go on the 2nd or 4th or 6th of the month. And then if you had an odd license plate, you went on the 3rd, 5th, 7th of the month, and so on. So there'd be rationing, and the gas stations had limits. You could only put $20 of gas in, or 10 gallons of gas.
How did people get to work then who had longer commutes and used more gas than their allowance, their odd and even days allowed? I wonder what they did.
The gas
they must have walked, hitched rides.
Yeah, it was a pain in the ass. Now, my parents didn't drive very much. They never went more than 3 or 4 miles outside our home, so it wasn't a big deal to us. But yeah, it had a major impact on people's lives, and the gas lines were really long. You could spend 2 hours in a gas line, and that's what they'll bring back. How else are they going to do it? Now, we've been screaming about this for weeks here, and as Ken just noted, you have this top aide to Kevin DeLeon who wrote this bleeping bill, and they still can't explain it.
We need to do a better job explaining how we're going to get there, meaning the 50% gas cut.
They haven't done any job.
What the bill does is it tells the California Air Resources Board, take care of this. An unelected body led by Mary Nichols, the fanatic. Are we really going to let that happen?
Well, see, this...
And apparently there was talk about, well, the legislature should approve anything they decide on this. And Kevin DeLeon said, no. I believe in separation of branches or something he cited. What do you mean? They're unelected. There's no accountability by those people. They're appointed by Jerry Brown.
Yeah, it's an agency. It's a bureaucracy embedded in the executive branch of the government. They're not beholden to the legislature at all. Once this passes and the legislation, in effect, says do whatever you want, they're going to do whatever they want. There's this old hippie, Mary Nichols. We've talked about her for over 10 years, and she fanatically despises the gas engine, the gasoline engine. She hates it. She doesn't think gasoline engines ought to exist, in her own words. This isn't hyperbole here. This is not exaggeration. She's made it clear she'd like to see the death of the gasoline engine.
And I think she wants it in her lifetime, and I think she's also like 70-something years old.
She is at least 70 years old, yeah. This is the last gasp of the hippies, her and Jerry Brown.
All right, here's what we got on the website. Links to all the Democrats in the assembly. You want to go click it, go to KFI640.com, the John and Ken page. You'll see it there. You could start calling and contacting them. There's phone numbers up there on the website, and we list every Democrat. There are some of them that are definitely leaning against voting against this bill. We can talk more about that when we come back, but if you want to start calling, and on the other side, which we mentioned 5 minutes ago, you want to stop the gas and the car tax, you should be talking to the Republicans because they're going to need a few of those votes. All right, more coming up.
John and Ken Show, KFI, and Libby Dinkman has news. More of the John and Ken Show. John Cobell and Ken Champeau, KFI AM 640.
All right, we're talking about a big week in Sacramento, and you know, for a long time now, we've been talking about Senate Bill 350. That's the one by Democratic L.A. lawmaker Kevin DeLeon, who actually is the head of the Democrats in the Assembly, is the Speaker. Actually, no, he's not the Speaker, he's the President in the state Senate. That's his bill. It passed the state Senate. If it passes the Assembly and becomes law, you're going to have to cut back your gas use by 50% within 15 years.
This means either massive tax increases or vouchers, gas rationing. you'll be barred from buying too much gas in a given week or month. All the power, by the way, there's no way to get at the decision makers, because the decision makers, the California Air Resources Board, run by this lunatic hippie, Mary Nichols, who hates gasoline engines. This is very important to understand. Once this passes, you can't go to the legislature and say, guys, reverse this. You can't go to the governor and say, you can't, because now it's in the hands of CARB. They're going to decide this. It's not like they're going to come up with a list of ideas and then the legislature and the governor has to approve it. Or their list of ideas is something that's up for a referendum that we can vote on. This CARB board, it's hard to believe, but it is the most powerful agency in state government in terms of the free reign that it has over your life. And they're totally unaccountable. You can't fire them. You can't recall them. There's no way to replace them. We're stuck with their decisions. If they say gas rationing, you can only do 10 gallons a week, that's what it's going to be. Good luck.
So here we are. By Friday, they have to vote on Senate Bill 350 in the state assembly. It only needs a majority vote. They do not need any Republicans to vote for it because they have an easy majority of Democrats. However, what we learned a couple weeks ago is there was a core group, perhaps 20, as many as 20, Assembly Democrats who are not so hot on this bill. And as it turns out, in a story in the LA Times, they're black and Latino lawmakers representing what they call socioeconomically deprived neighborhoods.
Also known as poor people.
John and Ken are standing up for the poor people today, at least with Senate Bill 350, because these lawmakers, and some of them are named in this LA Times article. We have a list of all the Assembly Democrats on the website that we want you to contact. But a few of them, because people have asked, well, who are these 20? Well, we can't get all 20 names. Some of them don't want to be targeted. However, some of them have leaked out. They're at least cynical about the bill. They're on the fence. One of them is Assemblyman Ian Calderon of Whittier, because it turns out that the environmental groups are taking out ads trying to urge people who live in these districts to get these assembly members to vote for Senate Bill 350. Calderon's one of those.
Yeah, Calderon has a district filled with poor people, poor Latinos. What's he doing to represent them? He's going to jack up their gas to $15 a gallon. Not to mention, there's also language that's going to cause your electricity bills to skyrocket, but let's put that aside.
But he may not vote for it. And his quote in the Times is, well, you know what? The environment's a top concern, but does it stay number one when gas prices go up and their utility bills go up? He sounds like he's not necessarily voting for it.
See, all these poor, and then many of them don't vote, but for those who do, these, and I don't pretend to think that many are listening to our show right now, but what they're going to find out is that these politicians that they put into office don't care about them. They don't care. Often, people vote for members of their own ethnicity, their own race. They feel they're better represented that way, or their own gender. But in this case, you're not going to get any loyalty in return. What you're going to get are a bunch of thug Democrats who are going to screw over all the poor people in their districts. They may say, oh, you know, we care about the poor. The poor are always being exploited by the rich, and we're their defense. We're there as their advocates. Well, when it comes down to it, I don't know why any of these people would fall in with the fanatics like Jerry Brown and Mary Nichols. I have no idea. Well, you would think that these people would be fighting bloody to protect their constituents from massive gas and electricity increases.
Yeah.
You would think.
As the Time points out, zero-emission vehicles are often too costly for low-income residents who are more likely to drive older cars with worse gas mileage. They would be hit hard if the cost per gallon rises. We agree. In fact, Jim Cooper, a Democrat from Elk Grove, said, you know, solar panels and electric vehicles are great, but they don't come to our neighborhoods. Yeah. No, they don't. This is an elitist issue. We were talking about this before the show. It's also something else we're going to talk about later. The bicycle crazy people. These are all these wealthy West Side, they call them coastal elites.
Yeah.
This is the issues they worry about, is climate change and bicycling. And you know what? The assembly members that represent these neighborhoods we were just talking about, they don't have those people in the district. They got people that they're lucky if they have a job, and if they do, they got to get there. And sometimes it's an old rusty car that gets them there.
This is wealthy, very wealthy white people who are screwing over poor blacks and poor Hispanics. That's what's going on here. Because people in these neighborhoods, and also these politicians are trying to confuse the issue by saying, well, this is going to lead to cleaner air if we reduce greenhouse gases. Carbon dioxide is not a is not a pollutant. Is not a pollutant. I'll repeat again, is not a pollutant. But what they're doing is they're telling the poor people in their district, it's like, oh, well, greenhouse gases, that's pollution. No, it's not. They're lying to the people, and what they're going to do is jack up their gas prices. They're going to jack up their electricity prices. And again, it's wealthy white people who have nothing to worry about, right? They've got six-figure jobs. Their kids are going to private school. They drive their Teslas around on Sunday afternoons. It is the worst form of elitism and paternalism. It's like, you know what's really important here? We've got to get the poor people riding bikes over there on the east side now.
That's right. Installing solar panels and buying expensive electric cars.
Well, can't they get solar panels? Can't they afford a Tesla? It's like...
doesn't work that way.
No, they can't.
All right, we'll go to the website, start calling these Democrats in the assembly, and make sure they, find out where they stand, and especially that they're against Senate Bill 350. You can also call Republicans in both the Senate and the assembly to stop the gas and the car tax increases. They're both up on the website at KFI640.com, the John and Ken page.
John and Ken Show, KFI, and Libby Dinkman is news.